and welcome to today's webinar, Rising Together, Empowering AANHPI Entrepreneurs, part of AEO's Equity and Opportunity for All webinar series. We are so glad to have you here for this important conversation in recognition of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. This is a time to celebrate the contributions of AANHPI communities and reflect on how we can work together to expand opportunity, visibility, and support for AANHPI-owned businesses nationwide. Today's event also marks a special milestone. It's been 1 year since we've launched our Equity and Opportunity for All webinar series, and it all began last year with our AANHPI Heritage Month event. We are so proud to continue this conversation and build on the momentum that we've created together. At AEO, we believe in the power of entrepreneurship as a pathway to economic mobility and equity. And we know that too many AANHPI entrepreneurs still face systemic barriers, particularly when it comes to access to capital, culturally responsive support, and opportunities to scale. That's why today's conversation is timely and important. Before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded and will be shared with attendees afterward. Please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to submit any questions for our panelists. We will aim to address as many as we possibly can. If there are some that we don't get to, we will follow up afterward. We'll also be dropping helpful links in the chat, including AEO's newly released AANHPI Business Ownership Fact Sheet, which offers fresh insights into the state of AANHPI entrepreneurship. And now, to set the stage for today's discussion, I am pleased to introduce Lori Smith, our Senior Research Advisor at AEO, who will walk us through key findings from our latest research. And as I bring her to the front, Lori, you could take it away. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Peter. I'm Lori Smith, and I'm really honored to be here with you all today. My presentation will address some of the important contributions and unique challenges faced by Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander entrepreneurs in the U.S. And there's so much ground that we're going to cover in our panel discussion later today. So I'm just going to kick us off by presenting some key data points and some context to help set the stage for that discussion. So first, you can find more data in our recently released fact sheet. And for additional insights, please check out our research website at AEO, where we have reports and interactive dashboards with business data across geographies and demographic groups. And so given all of the talent in the call here, I'd love to hear your thoughts on new research opportunities and also talk about ways that we can improve some of our dashboard tools and features. So, and we're always interested in exploring potential collaboration. So please reach out to us at research@aeoworks.org to talk about anything related to research. Now, the main takeaways of my presentation today are, first of all, to talk about the really substantial and growing importance of entrepreneurship in the AANHPI community, why this matters for the community, as well as for the economy as a whole and for small business development. And then I'll show that there are still significant gaps and how we need better data to understand and address those gaps. But first, I'll start with some context on the AANHPI community. So first, population growth. Some of you may be familiar with these statistics already, but often whenever someone talks about why we should pay attention to the AANHPI community, we hear that this is one of the fastest growing groups in the country. So between 2000 and 2019, the Asian American population grew by 81%, outpacing a 70% increase among Latinos, followed by a 61% increase for the NHPI population. And so however you slice this data, this has been pretty much true since 2000. So it was true from 2000 to 2005, from 2005 to 2010 until the present. It's the case that the Asian American population has outpaced other groups in terms of growth. And by 2060, demographers project that the Asian population will reach 46 million people. And much of this growth has been fueled by immigration. So what we've seen since 2004, so for more than 2 decades, is that there have been more Asians coming in as legal permanent residents than Latinos coming in as legal permanent residents. Starting in 2009, so more than a decade ago, there have been more Asian foreign-born coming into the United States than from any other region in the world, including Mexico and Central America. And we've also seen rapid growth in the Asian undocumented population. So these trends are all important because many people, when they think of immigrant entrepreneurs, they think of Latino entrepreneurs. But in fact, most Latinos in the US, no matter how you measure them in terms of resident population, in terms of the adult population, are nowhere close to a majority immigrant. And so depending on the parameters, we're talking about 2/3 of the Latino population as native born. And by contrast, Asian Americans are predominantly immigrant population. Then some people say, well, the Asian population is much smaller than the Latino population. But in states like California, we may have more Asian immigrant entrepreneurs than Latino immigrant entrepreneurs. And so this has significant implications for us when we think about strategies to support immigrant entrepreneurs, a point that I'll return to later. So Asian Americans are increasing their share of the foreign-born population. But even though we've had more Asians than Latinos coming in terms of inflows, the base population of who the immigrant population is still close to majority Latino. But demographers project that by 2065, there'll be more Asian immigrants in the United States than Latino immigrants in the United States. So now we've seen that Asian Americans are a large and growing part of the US population. So as you would expect, Asian Americans are also a large and growing part of the US business community. But even just beyond population trends, their contributions to the business community are really very substantial. So taken together, over 3.5 million there are over 3.5 million businesses in the US that are owned by AANHPI entrepreneurs, accounting for 10% of all US firms in the most recent census data available. And these businesses collectively employ about 5.4 million W-2 workers and generate approximately 1.4 trillion in annual revenue, underscoring their significant impact on the economy. And this is data from the 2022 US Census Bureau Annual Business Survey and non-employer statistics by demographics, which were released just earlier this month. So this is really the most recent data available about the full landscape of business ownership in the AANHPI community. And what we've also, consistent with the trends we just saw in terms of population change, we see that nearly half of the AANHPI-owned businesses are immigrant-owned. So 45% of AANHPI businesses are immigrant-owned versus only 6% for all other businesses. And this is from the Entrepreneurship and the Population Survey that was fielded just last year by NORC at the University of Chicago. And now here is a chart showing growth in key firmographics for different racial and ethnic groups from 2012 to 2022. And so looking at this chart, a few things stand out. So first, if we look at growth and the total number of all firms in the first row here, we see that Asian American entrepreneurs are one of the fastest growing business segments in the US economy. But really the native Hawaiian and the Pacific Islander firms are the fastest growing group in terms of business growth. And really across all key firmographics, including payroll growth and employer firm growth. And this growth is really all the more remarkable considering that their overall population growth is not as high as we just saw earlier. And now to give a sense of the overall scale and significance of AANHPI business ownership, this chart shows the share of total firms owned by each race and ethnicity relative to their share of the US population. And so what you'll see here is that Asian entrepreneurs are overrepresented in terms of business ownership, meaning that there are more Asian-owned businesses than you would expect, given their share of their population. And all other groups, including NHPI entrepreneurs, are statistically underrepresented. And the representation of Asian-owned businesses is even more striking when we look at employer businesses. And so here we see that Asian-owned businesses represent 11% of all employer-owned businesses, while their share of the total population is only between 7 to 8%. And so this means that we also have more Asian-owned employer businesses than for any other minority group. And they collectively employ 5.2 billion people, more than are employed by any other minority group. So, but like other minority groups, we see fewer NHPI employer businesses than we would expect given their share of the population. So for all these reasons, we can say that the NHPI community is growing in importance. Their businesses are becoming more visible and increasing in terms of employment and output, making outsized contributions to the US economy. So what's the challenge? Well, one problem is a persistent credit gap. Asian entrepreneurs were denied credit at a significantly higher rate than white entrepreneurs. So here we see that in 2022, 29% of Asian small business credit applicants were denied credit versus just 18% for white applicants. And Asian entrepreneurs are also less likely to receive the full amount of credit that they apply for. So last year, 38% received the full amount compared to 56% of white-owned businesses. And so while Asian entrepreneurs are playing a really outsized role in the business community, their impact could be even greater with increased access to small business credit. So this gap reflects a missed opportunity. And another problem is that when we take aggregate pan-ethnic labels like Asian American, we mask significant disparities within the Asian category. And so we also see disparities, again, within the AANHPI label. So here, for example, we see the distribution of revenue by race and ethnicity, with lighter colors representing lower revenues and darker shades representing high revenues. And what we see in terms of the distribution of business revenues is that median revenues are higher for Asian entrepreneurs than for those of other racial and ethnic groups. But if you look at Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander-owned firms, you'll see that they have substantially lower revenues. And then if I had access to data to show you breakdowns by subgroups within the Asian category, you would also see it mask significant disparities between groups. And so this is a challenge for any pan-ethnic category, of course, or for any category for that matter. But this is especially a challenge here, given the size of the Asian continent and the number of communities from different national origins. So this is what people call data disaggregation, right? Whenever you are able to get access to more fine-grained data, you can make better inferences. And so now I'll show more disaggregated data on income from the American Community Survey. And so here we see that while median incomes are higher for the AANHPI community than the US median income, we also see really huge differences. So at the top, you have Indian Americans, Filipinos, and Taiwanese that have the highest levels. And at the lower end of the spectrum, you have what have tended to be predominantly refugee populations, right? Like Burmese and Bhutanese populations. And this gap is just enormous. And just to give another example that is relevant to many business service providers, we also see significant differences across groups in terms of English proficiency. So this is why data disaggregation is so vital. So it's not just about income and revenues. If you look at limited English proficiency, there are huge differences between Indians who do not have as high language needs versus Vietnamese that have significant needs for translation and for other kinds of assistance when it comes to dealing with navigating agencies that communicate predominantly in English. And then finally, the term Asian and federal data covers a vast and diverse population. So it covers East Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia, and now most recently, Central Asia. So the new OMB standards adopted in 2024 reclassified Central Asian groups as Asian after decades of being counted as white. But data categories still fall short of capturing identity. So many of these communities may not see themselves as either fully Asian or as fully white. And as we analyze AANHPI data, we need to account for that nuance and push for continued disaggregation and greater cultural specificity. So without data, we cannot make our case, and that's like the main takeaway. We need to push for more disaggregated, publicly available data. This data is about who gets seen and who doesn't, and who gets their needs prioritized and who doesn't, and who gets the right resources and opportunities. And now in closing, I want to highlight why this all matters for those seeking to build a more equitable and inclusive economy through entrepreneurship. And so we're run by pioneering research in the sociology of entrepreneurship that has really played a critical role in highlighting the significance of entrepreneurship and building entire communities. So the work of this seminal piece has shown how immigrant entrepreneurs play a vital role in reshaping the American economic landscape and creating opportunities and mobility of entire communities. And so these achievements are really all the more important when we think about ways to revitalize small businesses across the US, and as we seek to bolster local economies as part of a sustainability strategy. So as we move forward, it's essential to support these entrepreneurs through targeted policies and community initiatives. To delve deeper into these issues and solutions, we are fortunate to have an esteemed panel of experts with us today. It is my pleasure to introduce our panel moderator, Joyce Pisnanont, who will guide us through this important discussion. Joyce plays a key leadership role at the National Coalition for Asian Pacific American Community Development, or National Capacity. National Capacity is a leading advocacy organization dedicated to advancing equity and economic opportunity in AAPI communities. In her role, Joyce oversees key programs and initiatives to close the racial wealth gap and foster healthy, vibrant communities nationwide. She brings over 2 decades of experience in community development, having worked with grassroots organizations and national capacity members in New York, California, and Washington. And before joining the organization, Joyce founded and led an economic development design center in Seattle's historic International District, work rooted in her longstanding commitment to community-driven solutions. Joyce holds a master's in social welfare from UC Berkeley and serves on the board of the Our Neighbors Capital Fund, a newly launched CDFI and national capacity subsidiary. And Joyce, we're thrilled to have you guide today's conversation. And now I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Lori. And thank you for such a great overview of data. Just really appreciated how you dove deep and talked about the importance of data disaggregation and acknowledged the diversity of our community. I think that sets a great platform for our conversation today. So I have the honor and privilege of being able to be in conversation with 4 amazing leaders within the AA and NHPI community. And who have been just leading the way in terms of really supporting entrepreneurial growth within our community over a number of years. So I'm going to ask them to actually introduce themselves first, and then I'll move into a series of questions, and just want to encourage folks, if you have questions as we're sharing today, please feel free to put those into the chat. We would love to, really turn this into a conversation because we have so much great expertise in the room. So I'm going to ask us to get started by having our speakers introduce themselves in the following order. So Susan, Suleiman, Carrie, and then Macy, if you could each take a minute or two to introduce yourselves. Oh, Susan, I think you're muted.
Hello again, Susan L. Allen, National President and the CEO of the United States Pan-Asian American Chamber of Commerce Education Foundation. We celebrate 40 years old this year, and very proud of our work in the last 40 years. We're headquartered in Washington, D.C., with regional chapters in Northern California, Arlington, Texas, which is Dallas-Fort Worth, Atlanta, Georgia, Chicago, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, and the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area represent the national capital area. Very pleased to be here. Look forward to the dialogue.
Hello, everyone.
Suleiman?
Yes, hello, everyone. My name is Suleiman Basir, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Afghan American Business Alliance. Afghan American Business Alliance is a nonprofit organization that supporting and promoting small business in our community. It's an honor for me to be here today. Thank you.
And I am Kerry Dewey, CEO of an organization that we refer to as PACE in Los Angeles. We are a multifaceted community development organization involved in early childhood education, affordable housing development, environmental justice, jobs and workforce development, and operate about 12 different programs to help small businesses grow that I can talk about later. But we take our name to heart and speak over 40 different languages and dialects. And Macy.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Macy Herr. I am the CEO of the Hmong, Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce. And as our name suggests, we're statewide, and we are headquartered in Milwaukee, have several satellite offices across the state, 4 satellite offices to be exact. And while the Hmong is in our name, we don't just serve the Hmong community. We economically uplift, historically underinvested communities all across the state. And so we provide technical assistance for small business owners and entrepreneurs. We also provide lending and networking opportunities, advocating for our communities. We really specialize in small businesses. And I should probably mention, we are a CDFI, a Community Development Financial Institution.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for taking a minute to introduce yourself. So I wanted to open up this first question to all of you, and this is really sort of building on Lori's presentation. There's one slide where she asks, so what is the challenge? And so what we'd like to actually ask you to speak to today is both opportunity and challenge. What are the most significant opportunities and challenges that you currently see facing AA and NHPI entrepreneurs? And what is your organization doing to respond to these dynamics? And I'm going to propose we just go in the reverse order that we just went. So Macy, if you'd like to go first, that would be great.
I had this feeling you were going to do that, Joyce. So well, let me just start off by saying, I just want to first of all thank AEO for inviting us for having this panel, because the reason why I found out about AEO is because, and this is going to end up a good thing for AEO in the sense that during COVID, I heard that many of our friends from around this area actually, got support from AEO and was able to have funding, passed down to them. And, but we did not. Over at the Hmong Wisconsin Chamber. But when I heard about it, I did reach out to AEO, and they were very responsive. So thank you so much, AEO. When I mentioned that, we have communities here too, Asian communities here too, that need support. And so certainly appreciate that the staff was really responsive. We were able to get dollars into, many of the communities that we work with that also need that support. So that really speaks to, I think, answering this question too. I think we have to constantly, tell that story about, what makes it so the narrative, but why it is that some of the communities with, how Asian subcommunities are different from one another, how they're similar to one another. Many of those that we serve, came over to the States as refugees. So many of them lived agrarian lifestyles. Many of them were not formally educated, and yet now they want to become entrepreneurs and business owners. And not that they weren't entrepreneurial to begin with, but that was always something that coming to this country. Many of them had to learn the culture, they had to learn the language, and then learn the ways of American entrepreneurship. So, I have to constantly tell that story, but the opportunity is also to teach people, about the differences among the different Asian subgroups. And so I'm going to give my friends here a chance to speak as well.
I guess there are so many different challenges and opportunities, and especially in LA, with over 1.5 million Asians, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders living here. There's so many different ethnic enclaves. One thing in common is that small business owners are afraid of crime. That's just it's very heartbreaking to see that so many businesses, restaurants, retail, as well as others, have their doors locked during peak business hours because they're afraid of crime. And even though we come and knock on their doors and to offer our services, they speak to us through the door and say, well, you know what, if you're not going to buy something, then go away. That's how strong the fear is. Of course, like throughout the decades, small businesses need access to capital. And especially with all the challenges we have in LA lately with the wildfires, patient capital is what's most important. We had over 4,300 applications for small business grants, and we are currently in the process of deploying over $1 million in small business grants because they're not interested in loans. And if they do accept loans, then they need patient, cheap loans, deferred if possible. The opportunities are many. In LA, there are billions of dollars in opportunities, city, county, state, federal contracts, and similar to helping an individual with challenges find a job with a good paying job with a good career. Helping a small business procure a contract is similarly transformative. And again, with literally tens of billions of dollars in opportunities, the door is wide open. One of the things, however, that I wanted to mention is that those are really interesting and compelling statistics that Lori provided. But one of the things that she did not provide is the small business failure rate. It does take a lot of courage to take all of your savings and invest it into a business when the odds of you going bankrupt and closing your business is much higher than the odds of succeeding. And so for you small business owners, the most important thing is planning. So again, planning, access to capital, and crime are the most important challenges right now. Thank you. That would be Suleiman.
Oh, it's me. Oh, thank you. Yes, beside the other opportunities and challenges that our panelists mentioned, I think one of the most significant opportunities currently facing our AANHPI entrepreneurs is the growing emphasis on diversity and equality and inclusion across the industries. As a business and institution actively are seeking to engage with the underrepresented communities, I think AANHPI entrepreneurs have a unique chance to showcase their talents, build a strategic relationship, and access funding and resources that were previously limited. So this is one of the significant opportunity that I think it's us facing for the AHNI entrepreneurs. And also, at the same time, there is major challenges, of course, as security, one of the major issues that we are facing, because I have a security company at my business, so I know how what's going on and how our business are facing this security, how much money they are spending per year for the security. At least a business, if they have a security guard, a uniform security guard, they at least spend $60,000 to $70,000 per hour just only for the security. Beside the police and other forces that are available, just for the private security company, they are spending from $60,000 to $70,000 per year. And also the other challenges that the entrepreneurs are still facing, such as the limited access to the capital, language and culture obstacles, and underrepresentation and mainstream businesses and networking spaces. These challenges are obviously it's indoor businesses development and long-term sustainability. So our organization, the Afghan American Business Alliance, are actively responding both challenges by creating inclusive platform that support our community entrepreneurs through networking events, access to educational resources, mentorship programs. So we work to amplify their voices, connect them with the funding and opportunities, and provide them the resources and kind of help them to bridge the gap and foster long-term success. So these are the things that our organizations are providing these for our entrepreneurs in our community, especially in our community, because since 2021, after the fall of the government in Afghanistan, we have more than 300 of Afghans that they came to United States with a dream to build a business here. And we are every day we are in contact with them. They are coming to our office. We're talking to how they can start their businesses in the United States. And there's a lot of challenges for them because as a starter, as a people that they don't have, credit, they don't have access to funding, they don't have the money. So these are the big challenges that specifically our community, the Afghan community, are facing right now.
Our organization's name is the United States Pan-Asian American Chamber of Commerce. In 1984, when we were founded, there were no other organizations that represented the business interests of Asian Americans. There was the OCA, Organization of Chinese American, whose mission was really increasing immigration quotas and talk about how Chinese were not treated well during the 1880s, during the Transcontinental Railroad construction, and also the crossing the mountain to find gold. And then also the Japanese American Citizens League, whose grievance was the redress of Japanese Americans being interned during World War II. That was it. That was the preoccupation of Asian Americans in the 1980s. However, we noticed that Asian American businesses across the board from China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, India, Pakistan, and Thailand, Indonesia were coming up in numbers in America. But nobody was speaking about them. Everybody thought about Chinese. Asian were good fried rice, great kimchi, great curry, and you go to Manila town to have good Filipino food. So we decided to change the image of America about the Asian Americans. We picked the name Pan-Asian American so that we are all inclusive. And so pardon me if I continue to use the word Pan-Asian, because it is like the frying pan, like a walk from rim to rim, from the Pacific Rim all across to the Indian Ocean to cover everybody in these two oceans. For about, this year is our 40th anniversary. For about 35 years, we focus on B2B, business-to-business transactions. We've been very great on federal contracting, corporate procurement, and Carrie talked about the billions of dollars of opportunity in procurement. That's what we specialize in. And we're very good at that. And I'll talk more about that. But when COVID hit America's shores, and we were picked by the SBA as one of 8 national hubs to go across the country and reach out to Asian Americans. We were the one to be picked on the merit, no political favors, not because we are a Democrat or Republican, just on the merit, based upon our work in the past 35 years, to be the one hub in America reach out to Asian Americans in cities hardest hit by COVID. So we picked 6 states: California, Texas, Georgia, Illinois, New York, New Jersey. And we created 15 spokes, branches, through our chapter and through our partners in our business community. And that's when we learn about the restaurants, the stores, the retailers, the trial and tribulation they had to go through in order to survive. That's when we learned the Asian Americans were the hardest hit, had the highest closure, had the longest time of recovery. We learned a lot from that lesson, and then corporation noticed and other agencies noticed and asked us to stay involved. That's where we learn more about the Asian American business community in the retail, in the restaurants area that our audience are listening in today. Laurie's presentation today presented a pretty good picture of Asian Americans. We're doing pretty well, okay? But at the same time, America does not know that of the Asian Americans who are doing very well, there are 10.3% who are living at or below poverty level. And I think this is something that we have to do something about. I think all of us here wanted to do something about, and we have been USPAC ever since, and that's the short name for our organization. It's called USPAC, USPAACC. There are challenges, but there are also opportunities, that I want to address the question that Joyce posed. What are the challenges and what are the opportunities? With the change in administration, we see that there's a lot of uncertainty. Every day, something new is happening. However, with the trillions of dollars that is going to be invested in America, including our own company like Apple and others, and Ford Motor, there will be a lot of job being created, and what we are focused on will be the supply chain fallout that come from all these billions of dollars that will be invested in America. And those are the opportunities. Can you imagine the supply chain that will flow out under all the data centers and chip manufacturing and auto industry that will be available to Americans? And if we are serious about insourcing some of the jobs that have been outsourced to outside of America, we could do that, especially with the help of AI. We do not have to always use labor, expensive American labor, in order to do all the work. And that's the opportunity we see. The challenges are, earlier I talked about, the so-called model minority myth. And I'm so tired of hearing about that we have been branded that you're good students, you have money, you have family support, so therefore you don't need help. You know, in my world, they do not look at me, my constituents, my members, as a model minority. They just look at us as challenges. You're good. You shouldn't be here. Why are you in this room? Okay? They acknowledge that we are good. Okay, and that's the problem, the challenges that of the folks that I have represented for 35 years. In addition to the folks that we have worked for the last 5 years on the retail level.
Thank you.
But I think.
Oh, Susan, I'm gonna keep us moving because I know we have some other questions, but we're definitely gonna come back to that point because I think that that's an important one. Because you lifted up a lot of really great things, but I want to make sure we leave enough time for also any questions that come up from our audience while we move through a couple of the other questions. So I'm actually gonna have Suleiman, the second question. You talked a little bit about sort of the diversity of our community, and you know, I wanted to give you a couple of minutes to speak to, you know, how ecosystem leaders can better recognize the diversity and tailor their strategies accordingly to better meet the diversity of our community, including new and emerging populations, such as the Afghani population that has come into this country in the last 5 years.
Thank you. I think it's a very important question because we are actively collaborate with other AANHPI communities by hosting events together, workshops. So I think and I believe recognizing and honoring vast diversity within the AANHPI communities is essential for building inclusive and effective support ecosystem. I think the leaders can better recognize and respond to this diversity by engaging the communities to build a relationship that with the grassroots leaders and organizations that represent specific AANHPI communities, listening directly to the community members and ensure that the strategies are grounded in life and experience. Culturally responsive. So I think training services such as business training, mentorship, and also funding access. That's another thing. Offering materials and support in multi-language formats. This is also crucial. And also, one another thing which is very important, recognizing that what works for one AHPI communities may not work for another. Strategy should be flexible, responsive, and also co-created with the community inputs. I think representation leaders ensure that the AANHPI communities members' voice or from diverse background are included in the decision-making rules, supporting other communities, encourage collaboration, solidarity. So these are the things that you know. I think by centering equity and representation and cultural awareness, ecosystem leaders can create more inclusive strategies that can uplift full spectrum of ANHPI communities.
Thank you so much, Suleiman. That's really helpful. And I'm going to mix up our questions a little bit to kind of build on this idea of, acknowledging the diversity of our community. And, one of the biggest barriers to that is something that many of you have raised already, which is sort of this idea of the model minority myth. And so, I guess, Macy, I'd love to ask you, how does this model minority myth shape public perception, funding, or programmatic access for AA and NHPI entrepreneurs, and how do we counter its effects? I mean, Suleiman's given us so many great ideas, and yet there is this sort of systemic challenge that makes it hard for many of those pieces to come into play.
Yeah, Suleiman talked about this. Susan also started talking a little bit about this. And so what I was thinking was, a lot of times, the model minority could be very hurtful and harmful, even if it's supposed to be a good, right, a good myth, and it raises up or rises, it really uplifts. It's supposed to uplift, right? Asians, if they're considered really smart or not in need, but that's actually harmful for everyone, and that's a lot of pressure, for individuals and for each community. When that's the belief about everyone, and so that certainly doesn't help. I was also going to say that we do have those stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason. There's a bit of truth, but a lot of non-truths in there, right? That isn't true in there. There are certainly individuals who still believe that they don't want to put they don't want to make any noise when there are issues or there's a need, so they don't say anything. But then what happens then is the larger community thinks there are those who will say, well, they must not have a need. If they're not making noise, they're not saying anything, then they must not have a need. When in fact, that's really not true, is it? A way to combat that I have found is really everyone coming together and speaking up, building coalitions. That's only one way. And to amplify the need, to talk about the need, it certainly requires individuals like ourselves to tell the narratives, tell our narratives, the different narratives that exist, so that people are aware of what the needs are, and that there really truly are needs. And the needs are not always the same, but they're needs nonetheless, right? There's some of our communities who may need only $10,000 to start their business. Others who might need $1 million, right? But at the same time, there's still a need regardless.
Thank you, Macy. So I sort of want to build on that idea, and Carrie and Susan, this is where I'd really love to hear more of your input. Macy talked about this need to lift up our voices, really build this new narrative around the needs of our community. And both of you are extremely experienced at the national level and locally on really advocating on behalf of your communities. And so I'd love to hear from your perspective, what changes in local, state, or federal policy would most effectively support equity for AA and HPI small business owners and entrepreneurs? And so Carrie and Susan, if you have some thoughts.
Go ahead, Susan.
From my perspective, I think that first off, we should not appear to be victims. I do not want people to, there she is, she's coming, she's going to ask. I want them to see me coming to give. I have something to contribute to, then they will open the door for me. So I always walk into the door with gifts in hand, gift for our idea, our talents, what we can contribute to their well-being and their growth. And never ask first. We pay it forward. Secondly, as Laurie had demonstrated in her presentation, we're doing quite well. But there are pockets, those who have not done well, who do not have a voice, like what Suleiman said. We, as ourselves, should pick up the cudgel and deal with it ourselves. If we do not invest in our own people, people say, why aren't you helping? So I would say in the analogy, write our own check, invest in our own community, and volunteer. Then we can touch the local community, the state community, the local and state government. They will see us walking the talk. Thirdly, yes, we should be at the table. And not only should we at the table, we should bring to the table really good ideas, not just our own idea, but other ideas, so that we show that we are open to new ideas. We're bringing diverse ideas in. We don't go there with an agenda. Don't want people to say that there she is coming with her own agenda. Our organization has been working with Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Black Chamber of Commerce, the NGLCC Chamber of Commerce, and the Women Business Council. We were the one who reached out to them and worked for over 20 some years, because we knew by ourselves, we're little David. We cannot work with a Goliath and fight with him for the food at the table. So we reach out to them. We now have a history of reaching out and say, hey, US PAC is the one that started to reach out to us and share. When the state government know that when we go to their meetings and we have something to give them, good ideas, so they can implement across the board, that's how we can get them to change their mind. Okay, and then we would say that, you know what? For every 100 Asian American who is successful, there is 10 of them at the bottom, and we want to make sure that we can lift them up. And they will say, who are they? And they listen to our stories, and they will say, yes, we would help you out. More importantly, for us, we should all be united. We cannot all agree, but find things that we can agree on. The problem with Asian Americans, we're so divided. We're so divided. And if she's there, I'm not going to be there. That's why when AU invited me, and I look at that, this is not my constituents, but I'm coming. I want to be here to share with you my experience in the last 5 years working with CNPP, reaching down to the stores, the bookstores, and the people who are selling food in trucks outside at the New York subway station. And when I tell the corporation that we have done that, they said, you did that, your folks did that, they actually volunteer, they turn around. But I still have a lot of work to do, Joyce, Macy, and Gary, and so on. But together, we can truly tell the Asian American story. As we say, we're only 7% of the population. In about 20 years, we'll be a lot bigger. Can you imagine we come together and begin to tell our own story? You can listen to mine. I have a lot of problem working with corporate America. They do not look at Asian Americans as somebody, a business that they should give contract to. They'll give it to others. And I have that walnut in my throat for many, many years. And I don't have any of the Asian American organizations that come and help me. We've been fighting this war by ourselves.
Thank you, Susan. Carrie, I want to give you a few minutes, and then I know we only have about 10 minutes left in the webinar, so please, Carrie, go ahead.
And Joyce knows that I can talk on and on and on and on. And so I'll try to keep it down to a couple of minutes. When it comes to policy, it's so important because there's so many tools and resources that advocates can use to be able to help and encourage AANHPI small business growth. At the local level, all municipalities, cities, and counties have access to what's called CDBG. It's actually Department of Housing and Urban Development program that stands for Community Development Block Grants. We use a lot of those to not only provide technical assistance to small businesses to help to do their business planning, because in way too many cases, it's because the business owner did not plan well enough, did not know what kind of corporate structure to set up, to incorporate, did not know how much money they would need, and so it's undercapitalized, and so that's a very big reason for failure. And didn't know how to do any budget planning, cash flow management, right? And so we use CDBG a lot to help to provide that kind of technical assistance. It is really sad that there aren't more programs similar to this, but actually the cities and counties have what's called a general fund that they originate that can also provide that service, as well as provide access to capital, whether it be grants or loan capital. On the state level, in California, we have the Governor's Office of Small Business, often referred to as GoBiz, that also provides that kind of technical assistance that small businesses need to help to develop that plan, as well as the Treasurer's Office that helps to provide capital to those small businesses. Again, these are not entities that have to comply with federal regulations, but they do have some kind of public accountability. And the federal level, of course, there's SBA, right? And one commonly used tool is the SBA microloan. I want to caution those organizations that are interested in helping to provide SBA microloans to small businesses, and that SBA will provide you this capital, but it's a loan to your nonprofit. Okay, and if your nonprofit does not succeed in its work, then you are in jeopardy of being sued by the federal government. It's a loan, right? It's not a grant to you. There's a 7A program. The SBA 7A program is what's called community advantage. Sorry about that. And what it is actually a guarantee program that small businesses use to help to provide loans up to $350,000. And then there's the 8A program. The 8A program helps small businesses to acquire contracts from the prime contractors. And it is not uncommon for a business to secure a $20 million contract using the 8A program. And then of course, Macy talked about the CDFI program. It's a U.S. Treasury program, Community Development Finance Institution, where you can receive a grant that you can use to lend out to small businesses and with flexible terms. All of these require that your nonprofit develop credit policies to talk about, okay, this is how we're going to lend the money out, or this is how we're going to give the money out. And this is what's going to happen if the small business fails, right? And so it's really important because if the small business goes into default, then you are going to have to comply with your credit policies that you draft, that your board of directors adopt, to say, okay, then we're going to take that guy's car, or we're going to take that guy's house. All right? Those are really heartbreaking questions that have to be addressed. How are you going to do that? We are proud of being able to help to secure over $150 million worth of contracts for small businesses, but they have to be contract ready, right? And if you're undercapitalized, you can't perform on your contract. You need working capital. Where are you going to get that from? The bank is not going to provide it to you. And that's where the organizations like us come in, is that we provide capital to businesses that the banks won't. We provide the business counseling that the banks won't. We teach and train, handhold small businesses in procuring those contracts, in securing those bids that the banks don't.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm gonna,
Sorry about that.
No, that's great. Thank you. And you touched on, you touched on access to capital, which is really great, which is, I think, one of the things we had hoped we would cover today. We've only got about 5 minutes left in this webinar. And so I did want to just encourage folks to put any questions that you have into the chat. And while we give folks a minute to do that, I did want to ask each of you to think of one thing as you're thinking about the future, just to kind of close this out, and you'll have very, very short amount of time to say this. What is one thing that organizations, funders, or policymakers can do to help move the field forward, thinking forward? And you'll have like 30 seconds to respond to that. And I am not sure that there are any questions in the Q&A or in the chat. So I'm going to ask each of you to just take 30 seconds or less to share and close us out before we turn it over to AEO. Suleiman, would you like to start us off?
Yes. Can you repeat the question again? I just got
Yes.
off. I'm sorry.
What is one thing that organizations, funders, or policymakers can do to help move the field forward?
I think, and if I talk specifically about my community, collaboration with the other AANHPI communities, bringing all of them together, listening to the members. They have a great advice and plans. So I believe by collaborating with the other within the AANHPI communities, we can better move forward. That's that. So I have 3 seconds. I can go on, but
That's great.
what I think right now, that this will be the more essential.
Thank you. Thank you. Carrie, you look like you want to say something, but you've got less.
I mentioned a whole bunch of different programs, and there are tweaks and policy changes that could affect all of our businesses that we serve. But if there's one that stands out, the SBA microloan that I talked about provides organizations with a grant up to 25% to provide technical assistance. If there was going to be a policy change, then I would say that it should be, instead of 25%, it should be 200%, because that's how much handholding small businesses need.
Susan, in just a few words.
Sure. Terry talked about all these government programs, and I'm just wondering though, what is the default rate? Funders are worried about default rate. How many of the good loans are good? My experience with CNPP was all of our small business do not want loans, they want grants, so they don't have to return the money. I don't know whether that's Terry's experience. So I think one thing the policy funders should make is to promote assiduously financial literacy. The borrowers has to understand their financial standing, that there is an obligation they got to pay back. If they go into a situation where they ask for a loan for somebody to give them money, they have to be responsible for giving it back. Then the funder will open the door wide.
Thanks, Susan. All right, Macy, last word is yours.
Okay, I was gonna say, there's so much work to be done, and when we think about the end goal, it's more important that we're all working together and be strategic about it. And, because at the end of the day, what are we trying to do? The purpose is larger than any one of us. So let's continue to just work together and hand in hand with our policymakers, with our different organizations, and so that into the future that we can continue to, be prosperous together as a whole community.
Great.
I
Thank you.
just want to add one thing. The other thing, these barriers requires both systematic reforms and also community action. So it should be both.
Yes, right. And you all beautifully lifted that up. So thank you. Peter, we're going to turn it back to you. I know we're at the top of the hour.
Yep. Well, thank you all so much. I'm just going to drop in the chat real quick. Let's see here. One moment. So I just dropped some links in the chat for all of you to look at. And I just want to say what an incredible discussion. I want to give a heartfelt thank you to all of our panelists for sharing your insights, experiences, and strategies to better support Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander entrepreneurs. Your leadership continues to shape a more inclusive and equitable future for all. So thank you again. Additionally, on behalf of AEO, I also want to extend a sincere thank you to all of you attending and being part of this important conversation. Before we close, I'll point your attention to the chat where I dropped in 2 links. I'd love to invite you to join us for our next Equity and Opportunity for All webinar. That will be taking place on June 17th, and we will be hosting Beyond Pride, Strengthening Support for LGBTQ+ Entrepreneurs in celebration of Pride Month. We've shared that link for upcoming events and webinars, as well as just a stay connected update link for AEO, where you can sign up for our newsletter and better explore our upcoming events. So we hope to see you all there. Thank you all again so much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.